After our mother passed, my sister Clara and I were left to sort through her belongings. Among the dusty heirlooms, a weathered trunk caught Clara's eye. She insisted on opening it, despite my protests. Inside lay our mother's diary, filled with dark entries about a hidden inheritance tied to a curse. According to the last page, our family had to choose. One of us would inherit wealth beyond imagination, but the other would suffer unending misfortune. Clara laughed it off, but I could see the madness flickering in her eyes. That night, I awoke to whispers echoing through the house, a voice calling my name. I realized the curse had awakened, but it wasn't the one in the trunk that was truly dangerous. It was Clara herself.
After Dad's sudden passing, we gathered at our childhood home, tensions running high over the inheritance. My brother, always the golden child, had a way of winning our parents' favor. I thought this time would be different, but as the will was read, it revealed only debts and scraps. In a fit, I lashed out, blaming him for our father's neglect. The next day, I found him lifeless in the very room he'd bragged about his future plans. Now, my relatives insist I must have cursed him, twisted by envy. As they gaze at me with suspicion, I can't help but wonder, did my words summon fate, or was he haunted by a darker secret all along?
Last Thanksgiving, my family decided that a baking competition would determine who gets Grandma's vast collection of crystal figurines. Yes, you heard right, an all-out sugar-fueled brawl over tacky glass that nobody actually wants. My cousin Tanya, the self-proclaimed baking guru, showed up with a 12-page recipe, complete with artisanal flour sourced from a mystical mill. Meanwhile, I whipped up a batch of store-bought cookies after a quick stop at the local market. When Tanya's soufflé deflated like her ego, I couldn't help but smirk. In the end, Grandma revealed that she wanted none of us to have the figurines. She donated them to a local charity. So much for familial favoritism. Who knew Grandma had a heart of gold under all that sweet, sweet drama?
Growing up, my brother Ethan and I were always told how special our family was. Our grandmother, a fierce matriarch, dedicated her life to us, pouring her love into holiday traditions and our upbringing. As kids, we'd huddle around her while she recounted tales of our family's past, her twinkling eyes lighting up as she spoke of ancestors who overcame great odds. But as we reached adulthood, things changed. Ethan, the golden child, was always favored. He was the one who excelled in everything: academics, sports, and even relationships. I was just the quiet one, content in his shadow. I never felt resentment until Grandma passed away last year, leaving behind her modest estate and a collection of heirlooms that she promised to share among us. What triggered the conflict was the reading of her will. I remember standing in the small, sunlit room of her house, the air thick with anticipation. The lawyer announced that Grandma had left everything to Ethan: the house, her jewelry, the family photos, all of it. I felt my heart drop, a cold realization washing over me. It felt like a ritual of betrayal. At first, I tried to talk to Ethan, hoping for a fair split. I suggested that we could sell the family home and split the proceeds. He brushed me off, claiming he wanted to honor Grandma's wishes. But then, in a desperate moment, I found out he had sold some of her jewelry online without telling me. I confronted him, and he just laughed it off, saying I was being dramatic and that Grandma would have wanted him to do what was best for the family. Things escalated quickly. Our parents, who had always been passive, were now embroiled in the chaos. Mom supported Ethan, believing he deserved all of it for being the perfect son. Dad, on the other hand, was torn between his kids. I felt utterly alone, trapped in a family feud that spiraled out of control. Christmas was approaching, and the looming holiday disaster felt inevitable. The climax of our conflict came during the family gathering. The air was thick with unspoken words and cold stares as we exchanged gifts. I had brought a scrapbook of our childhood memories, something Grandma would have loved. As I handed it to Ethan, I felt a surge of hope that maybe he would see what was truly valuable. Instead, he laughed, tossed it aside, and yelled that he didn't need reminders of the past. In that moment, I felt something inside me snap. I yelled back, calling him selfish and reckless, and our parents had to step in to separate us. Ultimately, I walked out of that house, vowing not to return until Ethan acknowledged the greed that had taken hold of him. The twist? Just a week later, I received a message from Ethan asking to meet. He confessed that he felt overwhelmed by the inheritance, fearing he could never fill Grandma's shoes and that perhaps he had been too harsh. This opened the door for a much-needed conversation. Reflecting on it now, I realized that the true inheritance Grandma left us wasn't material wealth, but the bond she cultivated between us, a bond that we nearly shattered. I hope we can rebuild it and make her proud. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you fight for your share or let it go for peace?
When Lucy received the invitation to her family's annual Thanksgiving gathering, she felt a mix of excitement and dread. The gathering had always been a cherished tradition, a vibrant tapestry of laughter, warmth, and the comforting aroma of turkey. But this year was different. Ever since her father, a once vibrant patriarch, had passed away, the air crackled with tension. Lucy had always been the peacemaker among her two siblings, Jake and Sarah, who had been at odds for years. Jake, the eldest and a self-proclaimed favorite, had always been more pragmatic. He worked in finance and had his life meticulously planned. Sarah, the youngest, was an artist who had never quite found her footing. Lucy, the middle child, had devoted herself to keeping the peace, often caught in the crossfire between her siblings' competing egos. As the turkey was carved and laughter echoed in the cozy living room, the topic of their father's inheritance leaked into the conversation. Lucy felt her heart sink. She knew that their father had left behind a will, one that had yet to be read aloud. Jake's eyes lit up with ambition as he suggested they discuss it. "Dad would want us to sort this out," he said, his voice steely under the guise of concern. Sarah, who had been pouring herself a glass of wine, bristled. "Stop acting like you're the king of the castle. We don't even know what he left." Tension escalated as they began to bicker over their father's possessions. Jake insisted that the family home should go to him since he was the only one capable of keeping it up. Sarah countered that it should be split because they had all shared memories there. Lucy, trying to be the mediator, suggested they wait until after the holidays. But Jake, emboldened by the conversation's volatile energy, proposed that they read the will right then and there. He pounced on Lucy's hesitation, sparking her own frustration. "Are you afraid of what it says, Luce, or are you just scared of the truth?" As the evening wore on, voices raised and accusations flew. The festive spirit had been replaced by a bitter chill, the air thick with resentment. It culminated in a confrontation when Sarah flung her wine glass against the wall, shattering the brief illusion of family unity. "You always think you know what's best. I'm tired of being the odd one out in this family." In that moment, Lucy realized this wasn't just about the inheritance. It was also about the scars of favoritism and neglect that ran deeper than any financial asset. After the storm had passed, the will was revealed to contain a clause that split the inheritance equally, but stipulated that the house could not be sold until all three siblings agreed. In a twist of fate, their father had foreseen the very conflict that erupted. Each sibling stood stunned, realizing their bickering had led to a realization. They needed to work together for once. As they gathered again, trying to salvage the day, Lucy reflected on how toxic patterns ran deep, and that destruction, while painful, could also pave the way for a new beginning. She saw a flicker of hope that they might finally unite rather than divide. What would it take to heal the rifts within their family? She wondered as she watched Jessica and Jake attempt to clear the shards of broken glass from the floor. Maybe it started with honesty, and maybe it started with love. What about you? Have you ever faced a family conflict that spiraled out of control?
When my grandmother, Edna Whitaker, passed away, the air in our family felt thick with unspoken tension. For years, Edna had ruled our clan with an iron fist, dispensing affection and attention with a heavy dose of favoritism. My brother Darren was her golden child, the one she proudly showcased at every family gathering, while I faded into the shadow of his achievements. I was the sensible one, the black sheep of the family, or so I'd been labeled after a few rebellious choices in my youth. As her only grandchildren, Darren and I were tasked with going through Edna's belongings after her funeral. It was a surreal experience, walking through the old house filled with memories both sweet and bitter. Nestled among the dusty relics of her past, we discovered an envelope with my name on it, tucked away in a jewelry box. My heart raced. Was this the grand gesture of love I had longed for? Inside the envelope was nothing but a handwritten note. To my favorite grandson, Darren, you are the future of the Whitaker legacy. Always remember, family comes first, followed by directions to her hidden wealth, a safe filled with gold and valuables. I felt a rush of anger and disbelief. Fueled by resentment, I confronted Darren that evening. Why do you get everything? I shouted, the bitterness spilling out like a broken dam. She never cared for me. He scoffed, reminding me of my past mistakes and how they had tarnished my reputation in the family. Our argument escalated quickly. Harsh words turned into accusations that rumbled like thunder. Days passed, and our family, already nicknamed the Whitaker Wreckage, began to fracture further. Phone calls from relatives reminding us of Edna's wishes only added to the mounting pressure. The drama climaxed when we all gathered for Thanksgiving at her old house, a tradition now tainted by greed and betrayal. Tensions flared and accusations flew. One minute we were carving the turkey, and the next, Uncle Joe shouted that I had ruined everything by thinking I could be as good as Darren. The accusation sent my heart racing, and I stormed out, slamming the door behind me. But as the night wore on, something shifted. I overheard my mother whispering to Aunt Beth about Edna's true last wishes. She wanted the inheritance to be spent on family unity, not divided amongst us. I realized then that the real legacy was never about gold or treasures. It was the bonds we had neglected and the love we had taken for granted. When I returned, I was ready to confront Darren again. But this time, instead of anger, I found clarity. I shared what I had overheard and challenged both of us to honor Grandma's memory by coming together, not tearing each other apart. Surprisingly, Darren, still shaken by the confrontation, agreed. We put aside our differences, at least for a moment, and rallied together to plan a family reunion, aiming to respect Grandma's wish for unity. In that moment of vulnerability, I learned not just about loss, but also about the delicate threads that hold families together. Sometimes, the greatest inheritance is not material, but the lessons we carry forward. Have you ever faced an inheritance dispute in your family? How did you handle it? What would you have done differently?
Meet the Johnsons, a family so dysfunctional that even a holiday turkey couldn't bring them together without some collateral damage. The star of our drama is Amy, the eldest daughter, who after years of being the family's designated peacemaker was finally ready to snap. You see, Amy had always been the good daughter, the one whose Tupperware parties were legendary and whose Christmas cookies made Aunt Susan weep with joy. Well, until this Thanksgiving, when her younger brother, Mark, decided to play the favorite child card in a way that would make even Machiavelli proud. Mark had always been the charming one, with his boyish good looks and a knack for making even the most mundane family gatherings seem like a frat party. But when Grandma Edna passed and left behind a modest inheritance, a diamond-encrusted ring that had been in the family for generations, things took a turn. Grandma's will stated that whoever won the annual Thanksgiving pie-eating contest would inherit the ring. The stakes were now higher than even Aunt Linda's blood pressure after she caught Mark swiping her sweet potato casserole recipe last year. As the day of the contest approached, Amy felt the pressure. It wasn't just about the ring. It was about proving herself as the worthy daughter. So she trained like Rocky, preparing for his biggest fight. Meanwhile, Mark smugly recruited the neighborhood's teenage football team for training sessions in between Tinder dates, clearly underestimating the power of Amy's baking prowess. On the big day, the Thanksgiving table was set, the turkey was golden, and tension crackled in the air, thicker than Aunt Linda's stuffing. With each pie cavity that got filled, the family's competitive spirits soared. As the contest began, Amy crammed pie after pie into her mouth, determined to win at any cost. Mark, meanwhile, relied on his charm, confidently joking and making the family laugh, while strategically throwing aside an alarming number of half-eaten wedges, claiming they were too dry. As they neared the finish line, it was neck and neck. But then, the climax. With one last bite, Amy consumed her final slice, only to realize it was a clever ruse. Mark had replaced her pie with a cake. Shocking, right? With pie smeared on her face and humiliation clawing at her dignity, Amy confronted Mark in front of the family, accusing him of sabotaging her. Just as it looked like Thanksgiving was about to devolve into an all-out brawl, Grandma Edna's favorite photo of the siblings fell from the wall, revealing an old note taped behind it. To my dearest Amy and Mark, your love for each other is worth more than any ring. In a twist of fate, both siblings realized the absurdity of their fight. They couldn't inherit the ring because Grandma had intended for them to share its story, not its value. They ended up laughing at their ridiculousness, although Amy did insist on taking a week's worth of leftovers in return for her dignity. It's funny how family squabbles can escalate around something so trivial while hiding deeper insecurities. But hey, at least I'll never eat pumpkin pie the same way again. So, what's your wildest family holiday story? Did it involve sabotage, tears, or just good old-fashioned drama?